Was 6:30 in the morning when Emily Carson unlocked the front door of Rosewood Diner, the small, cozy cafe tucked on a quiet corner of Main Street. She had worked there for 6 years, always on the early shift, always with a tired smile and a coffee pot in hand. Life hadn't been easy on her. Her mother was sick, her younger brother was still in college, and her paycheck barely covered rent, but Emily had learned one thing: kindness didn't cost a dime. Every morning at exactly 7 o'clock, an elderly woman would come through the door. She wore the same pale blue coat, even when the weather warmed, and always sat in the far left booth by the window, the one where sunlight would gently spill in after sunrise. Her hair was silver, her movements slow but graceful, and her eyes had the kind of sadness that made you want to sit beside her and ask what she'd seen in life. Her name was Mrs. Eleanor Bryant, and she ordered the same thing every morning: a cup of chamomile tea, one slice of toast with honey, and scrambled eggs, not too soft, not too dry. She always brought exact change in a tiny leather purse and left $2 as a tip, not much, but always consistent. At first, Emily didn't think much of her. She was polite, quiet, and rarely spoke beyond a gentle, "Thank you, dear." But after a few weeks, Emily began to notice things. The way Mrs. Bryant would wince when she tried to open her wallet. How her hands trembled when she lifted her teacup. The way she sometimes stared out the window, eyes glistening, as though watching someone she once loved walk away. One particularly cold morning in November, Emily noticed that the old woman's coat was soaking wet. Her shoes squished as she walked, and her hair clung to her face. "Oh, Mrs. Bryant. You'll catch a cold," Emily exclaimed, rushing over with a towel. "It's nothing, dear," the old woman said with a faint smile. "The bus didn't come on time. I walked." "Walked? From where?" "Just a few blocks." But Emily later found out that a few blocks actually meant nearly 2 miles, up a hill, in the rain. From that day, Emily started preparing her tea the moment she saw the old woman crossing the street. She'd warm a blanket in the back, bring her a small muffin on the house, and insist on calling her a taxi home on stormy days. "You're too kind," Mrs. Bryant would say every time. Emily always laughed softly. "You remind me of my mom," she said once. "She's sick right now. I can't do much for her, but I like taking care of people. Makes me feel closer to her." Mrs. Bryant reached out a trembling hand and placed it gently over Emily's. "Then you have a good heart, my dear. Never let life harden it." Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. They became part of each other's routines. Sometimes, when the diner was slow, Emily would sit across from her for a few minutes, just talking, about old movies, books, or how life had changed too fast. One day, Emily noticed that Mrs. Bryant wasn't wearing her ring. She always had a thin gold band with a single ruby. "Forget your ring today?" Emily asked casually as she poured tea. Mrs. Bryant smiled faintly. "No, dear. I sold it." Emily froze. "Oh. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "It's all right," the woman said softly. "It wasn't doing much sitting on my finger. Now it'll help someone who needs it more." That answer sat with Emily for days. There was a quiet strength in that old woman, something powerful beneath the frailty. Then one morning, Mrs. Bryant didn't show up. Emily kept glancing at the door every few minutes, but the little bell never rang. The next day, she didn't come either. Nor the next. A week passed. 2. Emily couldn't explain why she felt so uneasy. It wasn't like they were family, but in some strange way, they were. The booth felt empty without her. On the 3rd week, just as Emily was wiping down tables, a black limousine pulled up in front of the diner. It looked absurdly out of place in front of the little cafe. 4 men in suits stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, clearly bodyguards. One of them opened the door, and a sharply dressed woman with a leather briefcase got out. The whole diner went silent. They walked straight to Emily's counter. "Are you Emily Carson?" the woman asked. "Yes. I'm Margaret Hughes. I'm Mrs. Eleanor Bryant's attorney." Emily's stomach dropped. Is she okay?" "She passed away peacefully last week," the lawyer said gently. "But before she did, she left specific instructions for us to find you." Emily's eyes blurred. "Oh my God." The lawyer placed a sealed envelope on the counter. "Mrs. Bryant was very fond of you. She spoke about you often, your kindness, your honesty, the way you treated her with respect when no one else did." Emily wiped her tears and opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a handwritten note. "My dear Emily. You were the sunshine in my final mornings. You treated me like family when the world had forgotten my name. I was not just an old woman in a diner. Once, I had everything. But after my husband and son died, I chose to live quietly, away from money, away from people who only saw my wealth. I wanted to see if kindness still existed in the world. You showed me that it does. By the time you read this, I will have gone home, not to the mansion I left behind, but to the peace I've longed for. However, I want to make sure that your kindness does not go unrewarded. You'll find that I've arranged for something that will make your life a little easier. Consider it a thank you, from a woman you once called family. With love, Eleanor." Emily's hands shook as she looked up at the lawyer. Mrs. Bryant was Eleanor Bryant, widow of Charles Bryant, founder of Bryant Industries, the lawyer explained. She was one of the wealthiest women in the state. But after losing her family, she disappeared. No one knew where she'd gone. Until now. Emily was speechless. "She left you this," the lawyer said, sliding a folder across the counter. Inside was paperwork, ownership documents, bank transfers, and legal letters. Eleanor had left Emily $500,000, a fully paid apartment in the city, and a trust fund for her brother's education. She wanted to give this to someone who reminded her of what humanity should be, the lawyer said quietly. You gave her friendship. She wanted to give you freedom. The diner was silent. Even the customers were in tears. Emily couldn't stop crying. "I didn't do anything special," she whispered. But she had. She had done what so few people remember to do. She had cared. Months later, Emily visited Eleanor's grave, bringing a small cup of chamomile tea and a slice of toast with honey. She sat there for hours, talking like old times, telling her about how she'd bought her mom a new place, how her brother was back in school, and how she planned to reopen the diner, this time as Eleanor's Place, a cafe dedicated to serving seniors and anyone who needed a little kindness in their morning. It became more than just a restaurant, it became a community. People came not just for coffee, but for connection. Emily hired elderly locals who needed work, and she set up a pay-it-forward board where customers could buy meals for strangers in need. Every morning, as sunlight poured through the same window where Eleanor once sat, Emily felt her presence, warm, peaceful, and proud. Sometimes, customers asked her about the name. She was a friend, Emily would simply say. And every time she said it, she smiled, knowing that in a world full of hurry and hardness, one small act of kindness had changed two lives, one that was ending, and one that was just beginning. Kindness, Emily realized, is like a ripple. You never know how far it will reach, or how many hearts it will touch. But it always comes back, sometimes in ways that leave you breathless. And so, every morning, as she poured tea for the early risers and watched the sun rise through the diner's window, she whispered softly, "Thank you, Mrs. Bryant. For believing in me." Because at the end of it all, that was what Eleanor had truly given her, not money, not property, but faith, the belief that goodness still mattered. In a world obsessed with success and status, a waitress and an old woman had found something far richer, the simple beauty of human kindness. And that was worth more than any fortune.